I'm Stuart Holliday, and I wanted to welcome you all here today to this discussion of what has become an incredible partnership to strengthen the relationships around the world, particularly between the United States and the UAE and beyond, and to use innovation, culture, collaboration, leadership exchange as a way of strengthening international understanding at a time where it's needed now more than ever before. We're delighted to have been asked to partner with the US-UAE Business Council and have such a distinguished panel today, including our US Ambassador, John Ricolta, to the United Arab Emirates. Meridian is a diplomacy and leadership center that normally is occupying a 4-acre campus in Washington, D.C. We are virtual, as many of you are, and we've been working with the UAE for many years, principally in the cultural diplomacy arena and working with Ambassador Al-Ataiba and his fantastic team at the embassy. We have many friends. I see Global Ties, Think Well, the State Department, all of the people, the Department of Commerce, all the people who've come together in this effort. So I think what I would like to say is expos have a complicated history in the United States. Everybody knows that. And it really has taken partnerships in the private sector as well as the government of the UAE in partnership with this group to try to bring this to a reality and a successful outcome. I'm sure it's going to be fascinating. I think the topics and the issues are cutting edge. I'd like to thank Danny Seabright and turn it over to him now to kick off the panel. I apologize for being on mute earlier, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And on behalf of Meridian, keep up the great work, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Danny?
Thank you, Ambassador Holliday, very much. And thank you to you and your team, especially for this wonderful collaboration. The Business Council could not be more pleased to be able to have the opportunity to roll out this reboot of the U.S. Pavilion, if you will, in partnership with you and your great network with regard to content, diplomacy, and all of the wonderful work that you do. Very, very, very important. I just want to quickly thank Pepsi Cola for being the first supporter of the U.S. Pavilion way back in the day. We really could not be more pleased that Pepsi, along then, led other companies to try to help support the U.S. Pavilion. And we want to thank the UAE government for its incredible largesse and the funding that it has brought forward to help make sure that the U.S. Pavilion is the wonderful showcase that it's meant to be. The Business Council, the US-UAE Business Council, has been involved with Expo 2020 since the very beginning, when it was an idea in someone's mind almost 8 or 9 years ago that Dubai and the UAE would compete to host this pavilion. And we've worked from that day forward to help Dubai highlight its ability to host a world-class expo and then bring together the business community and others to support it. In that regard, I'd like to thank our AmChams in Abu Dhabi and Dubai for the assistance that they've provided over the years and the partnership that they provide every day to the expo to help promote it. Very, very, very important. If I could say one last word or two about state delegations. We have maybe 8 or 9 states represented today, states in the United States represented today on the call to help get the word out about this reboot of the U.S. Pavilion more broadly in the U.S. ecosphere. We intend to do this as a quarterly update, hopefully with our friends at Meridian, to provide a platform to get timely updates about the U.S. Pavilion out to the community as the U.S. government and the Expo team and the State Department work over the next year to bring the U.S. Pavilion to Expo 2020. Finally, we do have a chat function today on the webinar, and if folks do have a burning question that they'd like to try to ask, please do pose your question in the chat function, and we will work those into the conversation as we move forward. With that, Matthew Asada, I believe we want to show a short video, or do we want to have, I'm sorry, I just have to look at the at the game plan here. Maybe we want to have Ambassador Ricolta speak first, if that's correct. I want to make sure I got it right because it's very, very important. Ambassador Ricolta, we could not do this without you and your team, and we really, really congratulate you on being named Commissioner General. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning to everyone in America and whatever time it is around the world. I'm very happy to be here tonight, our time. It's 6:07, and the U.S. participation in Expo 2020 is one of the embassies and the State Department's top priorities, and significant progress has been made over the last 7 or 8 months, as you will see as tonight's presentation rolls on. You know, back in February, we hosted a very successful first event, and then of course COVID interfered. Members of the USA-UAE Business Council, as well as both chambers, as you said, both Abu Dhabi and Dubai joined us. And I'll have to say this, that first day there was significant interest. The room was standing room only, well over 100 companies participated, and then COVID hit and postponed Expo by 1 year. But that was sort of a good thing in a way, because it has given new life to our efforts to bring as much of the U.S. business community into Expo as possible. And as you're going to find out, the programming and the exhibitions are presenting opportunities never before rolled out at Expo, and especially the programming. I've been just totally impressed with what the Emiratis have in store. I also want to say that we heard a lot before the Emiratis were so generous in putting forth the opportunity to be able to participate, that there was this uncertainty of the U.S. really participating, and this was holding a lot of companies back. But tonight we're going to showcase where we are. The building itself is, the structure is up, structural steel, and there's going to be a great discussion on that. So let me just say thank you, Meridian. Thank you, USA Business Council, for providing this vital platform for us to get our message out. So what I'd like to go and just have a couple more words, if I may. I was on site last month and saw an incredible progress that the team was delivering in terms of the U.S. Pavilion. It's a stunning, complex, intriguing, and most of all, very exciting for the senses that it will unleash in every person who attends. You know, today we're very fortunate to have representatives from our creative team, our pavilion operator, and organizations recruiting our youth ambassadors and cultural performers with us. We want to share with you their excitement, their ideas, their vision of bringing the U.S. Pavilion alive, and the wonderful story that we're going to be telling, life, liberty, and the pursuit of the future. I would be remiss if I didn't also call out and give an attaboy to PepsiCo. They were first on board long time ago, and PepsiCo, thank you again. I wish I had my can here. I'd like to show it. Anyway, for those who are interested in learning more about how to get involved, our participation and your interest is most welcome. And while it may be hard to imagine with international travel just reopening, I hope that all of you will be a placeholder in your calendar for Expo 2020, which is actually going to start in 2021 and runs through March 22. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Danny, to kick the show off. Thanks again for participating today.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Ricolta. Now we're going to share a video that was prepared, and we're going to play. It's a 12-second video to play twice, just so that everyone can clearly see it. This shows the timeline of the U.S. Pavilion site. Go ahead, David, please. Thank you, David. Now I'd like to introduce Mr. Matthew Asada, who's the Deputy Commissioner General of the U.S. Pavilion, works closely with the U.S. State Department Expo team, and works, of course, under Ambassador Ricolta to bring this greatest show on earth all together for us. Matthew, over to you, please. Thank you for agreeing to do this and helping with all your expertise to organize the event today.
Well, Danny, thanks again. Thanks, Ambassador Holliday, for co-hosting today's event. And this was something that we had been looking to do in person at one time back in April or so before, COVID had us all interacting virtually and learning now how to engage. But it has been a long journey for the United States. And I can say that as you just saw, we're in a pretty good position. Our building construction proceeds. And I was just on the site last Thursday and got a chance to see how far along it's come. So what you didn't get to see in the time lapse is actually now the first floor mezzanine that's gone up. The steel's there. You can see the outlines for the elevators, the stairs. Everything is starting to come together nicely. And next week, they'll start to actually enclose the building itself. Just to take a moment actually to talk a little bit about Expo 2020. And I know we have some of our friends from the organization here on the line. But just want to convey to all of the attendees that work there at Expo 2020 is continuing apace. It's great to see everyone back in the office. It's great to see the programming and communication teams up and running, and they're trying to figure out things about what that programming calendar looks like. And they've told us that those weeks that they had already selected, the themes for those weeks, they're likely to continue to use those in the year moving forward. Maybe with slight modification to the dates themselves, but we're excited to learn about that new programming calendar, and we should hear more about that maybe a little bit later this fall. I would be remiss also if I did not acknowledge our colleagues here at the consulate that are helping put this together, Ravi Srivastava, as well as Maya Nadal Fall, and then everyone in the Expo unit back in DC. This really has been a team collaborative effort. Senior Coordinator Kara Snesko, the Office Director Jim Core, colleagues like Doug Mossman, our Exhibits Design Manager, Anthony Bahigian, working on the cultural programming, and Ethan Stanton and Brittany Patterson. When we talk about the U.S. Pavilion and U.S. participation in Expo 2020, we generally focus on a couple of lines of efforts. We have the pavilion itself, which you've seen some video of going up. We have the exhibition, which you're about to hear more about. We have all the programming that's taking place that you're going to hear from Katherine Browns a little bit later. All of this kind of comes together with our virtual outreach and then the virtual presence. And I'm excited to say today that our website for the US Pavilion is now up online, usapavilion.org. And so we're beta testing it right now with you guys, and you can check that out. And our social media accounts are beginning to also send out some information. So that's all being done by our pavilion operator, Thinkwell TVG. So we're very pleased to be able to share with you some new information. Without further ado, I think the best persons to talk about the exhibition today, and it's not meant to be a hard sell, it literally is meant to share some of the magic and share some of that story with you, is our creative team. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Danny.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Very much appreciated. We're going to next have Peter Ford, the Creative Director of Thinkwell Group, give a presentation. We're going to display on the screen PowerPoint slides to walk through these next few presentations. These slides will also be up on our website after the webinar is finished, so you all can access them there as well. Please, Peter, thank you for joining us from, I think you said you're in Australia and it's midnight there for you. So we really thank you for coming on in the middle of your workday, Peter, to do this webinar. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure, Danny. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew and ambassadors. I'm Pete Ford. I'm the Creative Director of Thinkwell, and I have the absolute honor of being the lead designer for the USA Pavilion at World Expo 2020. I can't tell you how happy I am to be able to present what we've got planned for the Expo to you today. I have to say that the USA Pavilion is always one of the most hotly anticipated at any Expo, but this one has special importance as the first Expo, obviously in the Middle East, but also, with the help of our friends, from the UAE to make this event possible. We're feeling doubly the pressure to ensure that we create a pavilion that is absolutely thrilling, worthwhile, educational, and utterly memorable for every guest that goes through there. We can actually probably pop through to the next slide. Thank you. I've got to remember my etiquette. And I was all ready for the hard sell, Matthew, so I'm a bit disappointed. It would be remiss of me not to talk about the pavilion facade. Our guests will be greeted by what will be a stunning facade that our guests walk up to. It is designed by our architectural partners, Woods Bagot, and by the fantastic Patrick Daly, who is one of the world's great architects. It's been a real thrill, to be honest with you. It's like I've worked with a lot of architects in my time, but to work with Patrick has been an absolute, not just a pleasure, but an education unto itself, which has been terrific. And that's one of the great things about an expo, as Danny said before. I mean, at the moment, I'm in Melbourne, Australia, thanks to COVID-19. But we have a team that is absolutely worldwide and are working across all time zones. We like to say that the sun does not set on the USA Pavilion at the moment, and I can tell you, based on my hours, it certainly doesn't at this point in time. The pavilion facade is distinctly American, and I think it's something that, without being overt, it absolutely encapsulates, enthralls, and hopefully beguiles people to come inside. If we can go to the next slide, thank you. Our Expo theme, as Ambassador Wakolta mentioned before, is life, liberty, and pursuit of the future. Now, when coming up with an Expo theme for any pavilion, it's important to really celebrate and be incredibly collegiate with what the Expo theme is, so connecting minds, creating the future. So what we wanted to do was actually explore that theme from a US point of view. So for us, life, liberty, the pursuit of the future was all about taking on this notion, not the notion, but taking on the simple fact that America is always at the forefront of inventing the future. And it has done since its inception over 250 years ago. So this pavilion absolutely celebrates, the impact that we've had on the world and how it's been done through a migrant nation. It's been able to bring the entire world together to create a future which is absolutely astounding if you think of the progress that's been made every decade. Just when you think technology can't get any more, amazing, it somehow manages to. So this is a pavilion that really celebrates that and also talks about what's next and how those impacts that it has on everyday life. The way it does that, if we can go to the next slide, thanks. Actually, just before I do that, we do have a special treat for guests when they do enter the pavilion. One of the things with the pavilion we find is that it's always important to take guests on a journey. So they're not just, it's not a trade show. Pavilion isn't like, you just don't, like, it's not like, something you would see at COEX. It's not like a museum experience or a theme park. It has elements of all those things in there, but it's quite unique unto itself. And the whole notion of the pavilion, the ones that really work are the ones that take our guests and they actually transport them and tell a story and a narrative. And that's certainly something that we're absolutely committed to with this pavilion. One of the things that we do is we start a story, start this narrative in our welcome space. And here we're going to have a welcome message, which is bespoke from the President of the United States to our guests. It's the first thing they see when he sets up what this pavilion is going to be about. Next slide, thank you. We are in the mobility section of the pavilion. We have a tip of the hat throughout the pavilion to mobility, not just from the point of view of the traditional sense of movement, but also for social mobility, mobility for opportunities for people, and how to tie that into the theme. And one of the ways that we demonstrably do that for our guests is that there's a moving walkway that take our guests through our first 3 exhibits. I'll step you through the exhibits in a moment, but we've designed a pavilion which is a very high throughput. We can get, as a minimum, 27,000 visitors a day. Pre-COVID, of course, we'll see how that pans out, but we can still have them in there depending on how we space them out. And then it takes them onto a journey through the first 3 exhibits to set up before they're actually coming to exhibit 4, which we'll go through in a moment. This walkway it's super safe. It's a great way to be able to, it isn't designed to push people through a pavilion. It's actually designed to slow people down, actually. So when they see the show and experience it, it actually gets them to be at our pace, which is something that we think is important. That, one of the things that happens with a lot of pavilions that are just walkthroughs, when guests get there, they tend to want to get through and get to see the next thing. The more you can engage a guest and give them, a pace that we want to present to them, you find that they really get into our headspace and they just enjoy it that much more. Next slide. Oh, and I meant to say that it's important too that this walkway won't pinch robes or kids' fingers or anything else. So it's incredibly safe. As we can see here on our floor plan, we have 4 downstairs. We have 4 main exhibits. Our first exhibit is exhibit 1. And this explores the idea of why is America known as the land of opportunity. If you can go to the next slide, thank you. Same thing at this end. And here we explore why is it that America invents the future? What makes it possible? What is that one thing, that American spirit, that is so intrinsic to the American nation, that actually allows for people to feel, empowered enough to be able to be, to dare to dream big, and then to be able to present ideas and commercialize them. And even if they don't quite work out, they can try again. America is uniquely, a nation where you can have a second, third, and fourth act, until you can get it right. And it's quite phenomenal. So in this, we talk about that it's American freedom, the particular type of American freedom, starting with the Constitution, that it's made that possible, that allows for the freedom for people to be the best that they can be, and to be able to explore opportunities and exploit their talents and their dreams for the world to be able to benefit from. Next slide, thank you. So as our guests cruise through one, they come into exhibit 2. Now you'll see here, it's quite a curvy and dynamic, point of view that they're getting as they go through these exhibits. That first exhibit, which was projected on the Liberty Torch, it actually shows a change of time of day, with the audio visual that's behind it. It is absolutely beautiful. As they come into exhibit 2, if we can go to the next slide, thank you, they actually move around a large screen. This is design of which is taken off the facade of the pavilion. So that star design that's actually pulled out, and we projection map onto that. Now here we look about the impact of American invention over the last 250 plus years. And it's everything from the democratization of flight, to the popularization of the motor vehicle, something, that we take for granted, that the telephone was invented in America, and in fact debuted, I think, at the Chicago's World Fair I found out the other day. Now you think about these simple inventions that we take for granted today and the impact that they have had on the world. And that's what we talk about here. We actually are able to celebrate that, and the celebration of people and companies and ideas that have actually had a massive impact on the planet. As we come around the corner into our next exhibit, and the next slide, go into exhibit 3. And here we bring it into a more modern day context in terms of today specifically. And this is how this affects everyday people all over the globe. So if we go to the next slide, thank you. So this talks about these big ideas and these big inventions. So something as simple as that we take for granted, as simple as GPS or the smartphone, for instance, that we all have one in our. I'm looking for a prop. I don't have one. Here we go. We all have one in our pocket or on our desk. And this is a supercomputer by 1990 standards. It sits in our pocket. There are 3.2 billion of them on the planet, and that is an American invention. And everything in there too, whether it's the internet or microprocessing or GPS or whatever it may be, or social media, is an American invention. And the planet benefits from that. So in these stories here, there's actually 6 of them in this exhibit. We get to celebrate how they impact everyday people from all over the globe, whether in America or India, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. It brings these big conceptual ideas and then puts them into these very straightforward, relatable concepts. One of the things you see the story here is that one of the ones that we talk about, for instance, is Zipline, which is a drone delivery service for medical supplies that's American-based, American-owned, American-based. But they have services in Rwanda and Ghana, and they were particularly on the front line of COVID-19 recently, and still are, by delivering PPE throughout those 2 nations in Africa, safely across the country via drone. So these are compelling and interesting stories that we will be talking about. And that's today, but what about tomorrow? So every expo needs to have a wow moment, the big idea, the big show, the reason you go to an expo, and you can only experience it at the pavilion. Otherwise, what's the point? You could just stream it on your phone, and honestly boring, right? So, as we come around the corner into our next slide, thank you. We come into our major exhibit. Well, actually, they're all major exhibits. We come into our big exhibit, which is exhibit 4. So our guests at this point have been moving along our moving walkway. Here, they pop off, they step off our moving walkway, and they step into the room. Now, this room, if you can go to the next slide, it's a bigger space that we have in the pavilion. And the whole idea is that guests are invited to just kick back and enjoy. So they can stay as long as they want. This is a looping show. These are all looping shows. You come and go at any period, and you can still get the entire story. But it was important to us, particularly in this day and age where there's a lot of video screens at Expo, to do something which was really different. Next slide, thank you. And what that was is that we're coming up with a show which is completely bespoke. And this is something that has never been done before. We're taking existing technology and we're putting them together into this show about the future and what's on the near horizon. So literally things that we hear about that America is absolutely leading the way, and we know they're going to be able to, you know, gift to the world again in creating the future. So I'm talking about quantum computing, fusion technology, automation, but in a way that people don't think about it, like, you know, whether it's automated trucking or cars, but also too automation in the home, robotic helpers, prosthetic limbs, democratization of space, which is, you know, it's a great, incredibly exciting thing to talk about with these guests, for our guests. So these are the big concepts, and this show is designed. We don't want to give too much away here because it's something that we're keeping under our hat. In fact, outside of this audience, there is no public sort of, you know, viewing of this at the moment because we're keeping something up our sleeve. So we have a surprise for guests that as we get closer to opening. This is one of the things that I've been very lucky. My career is based on building pavilions, designing and building pavilions. And then this is my 30th year doing it, which you can probably tell by looking at me. And one of the things that we think is always critical for any you know, pavilion is to actually beguile an audience, and that's make them fall in love with you by giving them something they've never seen before. And this is, to me, you know, to embody the American spirit in a show which is dynamic, it is world first, it is utterly unique, and you only get the one chance to see it, and that will be at the USA Pavilion, is critical. Okay, to the next slide, thank you. I'm just checking my time here, I think I'm okay. We bring it back down to earth at this point, and, you know, we've looked at stuff that's on the near horizon, we've looked at technology, but now we're going to bring it back to the next slide, which is celebrating America's natural beauty. This is a transition space that our guests will be able to either take the lift or go up to the stairs to our next exhibit, Exhibit 6, and it celebrates the extraordinary natural resource that America has in its national parks. Next slide, thank you. Upstairs, we have every pavilion should have a space where guests are invited to actually stay as long as they want and explore and dig deeper. This is Exhibit 6 for us. So if we can go to the next slide, thanks. This is a chance for our guests, you know, to look at everything from studying in America to traveling to America to investing in America, but also to find out about some of the big events that are coming up, whether it's the Olympics, the World Cup soccer, potentially Expo 2027, which there's a bid coming up for one of the American states. I don't know if I'm allowed to say, actually, I should just back that off a bit. But also to create a tactile space with some, you know, other dig deeper moments. You'll be able to touch a moon rock there, a real moon rock, not a fake one, you know, which is amazing and something that doesn't happen very often outside of continental USA. And also too, we have a little exhibit about Mars, which is, you know, one of the things I learned in designing this pavilion is that America has had an uninterrupted Martian presence exploring Mars through robotic rovers for 16 years and counting. So we're going to have live feeds from some of those Martian rovers and satellites permanently going through to our display here, including data transfers from Voyager 2 specifically, which is careening well and truly out of our sea. So first man-made object to leave our solar system and is in interstellar space. It is monitored every minute of every day at JPL, and we're going to have a live feed of that too, just to remind people just how big ideas and big science lead to big moments, and certainly that's what we're celebrating. Next slide, thank you. Our guests come down the ramp. We're keeping our big exhibit a little bit under wraps here externally, but you might be able to guess just by looking underneath it what it might be. Who knows? We have outside, though, we have a tremendous outdoor entertainment area for our cultural program. There's also F&B outside. So this is a pavilion that, as Ambassador Coulter, you know, and Matthew were both saying before, there is a vibrant set of programming that's at the pavilion as well. This is a pavilion that's live 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and comes alive when the sun sets as well outside. We all know that the region is very much a nighttime culture, and, you know, we intend to celebrate that, to be able to celebrate, to be able to entertain and engage as many people as humanly possible. And that is a great segue to my operations partner on the project, Simon, via Danny. So thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to be able to talk to you today.
Peter, thank you very much. That's outstanding presentation, and I'm looking forward to that spacecraft coming down and landing every night at the pavilion as part of your outside experience. Ladies and gentlemen, next, if we could please go to Simon Arnold, who's going to give us a quick presentation of operations and supply opportunities. Simon is the Managing Director of TVG Global. Please, Simon, over to you.
Thanks very much, Danny. It's a pleasure to join you here this evening and talk a little bit through operations. Once Peter and his colleagues at Thinkwell have finished designing this beautiful pavilion and this outstanding exhibit, it's really up to the operations team to bring it alive. And if we can go to the next slide, it'll just show you a little bit about the sort of things that operations is responsible for, which is a pretty broad range of touch points and some pretty critical ones, as you can imagine, as well as all the normal venue management, facility management, those sort of tasks. Obviously, a critical one is staffing. We'll have several hundred staff. And why I say it's so critical is we've often found in expos in the past that a meaningful dialogue, a meaningful interaction for a visitor with an American about something to do with the bilateral relationship, or why did you put this in the show, or what's special to you about working in Dubai at the expo, that 5-minute dialogue or whatever can actually be one of the most meaningful things that people take away from the experience. And a very, very vital part of that has always been the youth ambassadors. And Katherine from Global Ties is going to talk a little bit more about the youth ambassadors later on, but I would just point out that this has always been a cornerstone and quite a unique part of the US pavilions. These young Americans being the face of the whole pavilion, and that's a really exciting part of the program. Another very exciting part of the program is the National Day. So this is a day at Expo where the US is featured throughout the site. We'll have a concert in our Wazzle. We'll have all sorts of programming, both at the pavilion, at other performance venues around the site. And we really, really want to take America to the site on that day. The other key thing that I want to point out is public food and beverage. And the reason I highlight that is, again, this is a unique opportunity for people to actually get a taste of America. And we've got all sorts of exciting ideas about how we're going to do some fusion between American cuisine and Middle Eastern cuisine, and some really one-off things that have never been done before, which I think will really get people excited. And I think the media will get really behind it as well. So we've got a few tricks up our sleeve that I'm looking forward to showing you next year. Next slide, please. One of the other things I wanted to touch on in today's presentation was the VIP facilities that are available upstairs. If we go to the next slide, please. We have a whole range of very interesting VIP spaces, and given this audience, I'm hoping many of you will come and be regulars in these spaces, whether as guests, whether as hosts, as collaborators. There's some really unique opportunities here over the 6 months of Expo. You'll see here, one of the areas I'm really, really keen on is this pre-event, post-event kind of cocktail area. This is something that's reasonably unique to the US Pavilion. A lot of pavilions might have some sort of VIP space, but not many will have something of the quality of this. And we think this is a great opportunity for that casual networking, that, you know, situation where people can have all sorts of informal bumping into one another, introducing people to one another. This is a great, great facility that we can do events on their own in, but we can also link it to the main VIP space. Let's go to the next slide and you'll just see, so we're on the first floor here, and that blue area shows where this facility is. So people have come either up the stairs or out of the lift, and they've come into this pre-event area. As you can see, they're shaded in the blue. Let's go to the next slide. Then we go to our main function center. So this is going to be a beautifully appointed high-tech function facility. Lots of networking, business to business, business to government, government to government will go on here night and day throughout the 6 months. And as I say, I think this is going to be a very, very exciting facility for lots of American organizations and brands and corporations to become involved in the venue. It's about 80 people sit down and about 120 stand up, and there's all sorts of terrific programming we can do in this area. We look forward to collaborating with many of you on programming in this area. Next slide. Here in the venue, this is actually located. Oh, let me skip one, Dave. Just go back one if we can. Yeah, so you can see here in the blue, this is now the main function center I was just talking about. And you can see the relationship with the pre and post function facility I was talking about. Thanks, David. Let's keep going. The next few slides just give us a few ideas of how we could set it up. So, as I said, in a banquet kind of environment, we can do about 80 people seated, which is great. The next slide, you can see in a cocktail kind of setup, we can do about 120, 140 people in a cocktail kind of programming idea. And the next slide, we can also do seminars and conferences. We found in expos in the past, this has been very, very exciting for companies to get involved with. They might do a seminar there, then they'll go and have a morning tea, then they'll have a look around a few pavilions, come back and do a lunch, and then continue the seminar in the afternoon. So very much only limited by imagination from a programming perspective. Thanks. Next slide. And finally, to round out the VIP facilities, you can see we also have a very, very high-end conference facility, which can also be used for more intimate dining experiences, can be programmed to be independent or linked to those other facilities that I mentioned. So we really have some excellent, excellent facilities that are available for American companies to come and use and make the most of. Next slide. The other thing we want to talk to you about today from an operations point of view is we have some really excellent opportunities to supply the pavilion. We're looking for American organizations and American companies to become involved in the pavilion and supply the pavilion, not just because there's an opportunity to highlight the products all through the pavilion, but also because it's a real working example that can be the best of innovation, the best of new products, new technologies, new ways of doing things, being creative in every way that the operation intersects with the visitor experience. Let's go to the next slide. And we'll just go to the next one, actually, just for the sake of time, David. Thanks. And I just wanted to highlight for everyone, to the audience, just some of the sort of benefits that we can provide to you, and we can customize a lot of this, but the sort of benefits we can provide to American organizations and companies. So we can do behind the scenes tour of the pavilion itself. We can curate days at Expo where we understand what people are interested in seeing and create special money can't buy type experiences across the larger site. All sorts of hospitality, as we've touched on. We can get products into the F&B outlet. We can get products into the retail store. Next slide, please. And then a whole lot of marketing opportunities, as you can probably imagine. Perhaps working with the school groups. We're going to have lots and lots of school groups coming through the pavilion. We're going to have gift bags, VIP gift bags, going to every one of the 15,000 guests we think will come to the venue. So again, so many opportunities for potentially products to intersect with the pavilion. Next slide. And we just wanted to, the last thing I wanted to leave you with was really just an idea of the sort of categories that we have for supply and the sort of time frame we're working on to hopefully roll out these opportunities. This is all going to be available on the website, and also we can talk to you one-on-one, of course, about it. But you can see probably the critical column here is the one where it says phase 1 EOI distributed. So this is for the 3 groups of category. You can see the first group, we're looking to release expressions of interest into the market in August, the second group in November, and the third group early next year. As I say, all this will be on the website, and we'd be delighted to talk to anyone who'd like to discuss supply further. Finally, I think on the next and final slide, couple of my colleagues who are in the audience today. So Harriet, who's working very much for us with associations, federations, and in the produce side of things, and Adam, who's working with corporations, brands and products. So again, their details. Please, by all means, we'd like to start a dialogue as soon as possible. As the ambassador said at the start, we're quite fortunate in some ways to have more time now to sit and work with suppliers, and really make sure that if you're interested in being involved in the pavilion, we customise the experience for you, for your guests, for your VIPs. Thank you very much. Back to you, Danny.
Thank you very much, Simon. In the interest of time, I'm just going to ask the next panelists to quickly move through their presentations. We want to save a little room for some questions at the end. If I could ask Shaker Farsak, who is the Principal Commercial Officer of U.S. Department of Commerce and Commercial Officer in our consulate in Dubai, and a very close colleague and friend of the US-UAE Business Council, to make a presentation on the U.S. Commercial Services Expo outreach. Shaker, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Danny, and good morning to all of our participants here today. I'm here to talk about the commercial engagement at the Expo. So why is the U.S. Department of Commerce promoting the Expo? Well, in short, it's a great opportunity. It's your opportunity to take advantage of the high volume of traffic to the Expo and the global publicity from this first ever Middle East-based World Trade Center event. Opportunity to highlight the value of your company, both in the Gulf and regionally. It will be a terrific platform to increase your market share, find new partners and buyers. And let me tell you a little bit about one of the vehicles that we will be using to promote you at the Expo. It's called Discover America. Next slide, please. So, what is Discover America? Well, it's a yearly platform highlighting U.S. brands, create more exposure for U.S. companies. What are its objectives? Well, it's a platform for U.S. companies to showcase their products and services, connect U.S. and UAE entities, maximizing your value at the Expo through a series of events throughout the UAE. There will be a program, comprehensive program, throughout the 6 months of the Expo, including movie screenings, band concerts, a Discover America run, and finally, and not least, a series of customized programs promoting American companies throughout the UAE. Next slide, please. So that sounds great, but the Expo isn't for another year. So what will we be doing before that time? Well, we're going to have a series of sector webinars starting in the fall of 2020 and leading up to the spring of 2021. We'll be aligning with the sub-themes of Expo: mobility, opportunity, sustainability. Our first webinar in the fall will be Expo 2020, Regional Platform for U.S. Companies, which will be taking place in September, and we will be doing that in cooperation with the Minnesota United States Export Assistance Center. Following that, we will be doing sector webinars on energy, ICT, healthcare, and transportation, including space. If this sounds of interest to you, please contact me or my colleague, Christelle Rizik. Her name is spelled out at the bottom. And certainly I look forward to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaker. Very, very much appreciated. I'd like to turn now, please, to Katherine Browns, who's the President and CEO of Global Ties US. And Katherine's going to give us a presentation on the U.S. Pavilion's youth ambassadors and cultural programming and ways to connect. Katherine, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Danny. And I will keep this quick, but I first want to thank you and your colleagues at the US-UAE Business Council, Ambassador Holiday and your team at Meridian, of course, Ambassador Rakolta, your team at the U.S. Mission and in the Emirates, and especially Matthew Asada and the Expo unit, of course, at the State Department, ran by Jim Core. It's been wonderful to work with you all. I represent our team at Global Ties US, which includes the core Expo team, Franzi Rook, Dana Hoyes, and Seth Joyner. And we've been having an amazing time working with our partners at Think Well. Thank you, Peter and Simon. Global Ties US is the largest and oldest citizen diplomacy network in the country. We represent more than 100 organizations who actively work on implementing US government international exchange and public diplomacy programs. Our strength is our broad grassroots reach, which illuminates the cultural richness of the United States. Thank you, Danny. Yes, the slide. And with our deep community connections, we're thrilled to be supporting the US Pavilion by recruiting the youth ambassadors and the cultural programmers who are going to help bring the space alive and really amplify the themes that ThinkWell so thoughtfully designed in the pavilion structure, which you just saw. So it's an honor to have on the call with us today our representatives who are supporting us with this effort from Global Ties San Francisco, World Oregon, Global Minnesota, Global Ties Kansas City, and Global Ties Alabama, just to name a few. So for the cultural programming, we're designing this to demonstrate American freedom of expression through a variety of the arts. This includes us recruiting musicians and dancers, chefs, athletes, expert speakers, and many more to really produce diverse programming that is innovative, energetic, and informative. And as Peter went through with the designs, the pavilion will have this outdoor courtyard with a performance space that will accommodate more than 200 people, and a smaller platform is a little bit more intimate and accommodates about 80 people. But there's also, of course, more than 16 venues across the Expo 2020 grounds. And so we look forward to utilizing all of those. Next slide, please, Danny. And we're also thrilled to be discovering and recruiting the youth ambassadors who will be, as Simon said, the faces of America, to connect the pavilion visitors with American society and culture and history. We're looking specifically for young Americans between the ages of 18 and 29 years old who can converse easily with the pavilion visitors in such critical languages as Arabic, and Farsi and Hindi and Urdu and Mandarin. As Simon also said, that the youth ambassadors have been a unique and popular element of US pavilions in the past because they provide that human connection to the United States and are able to speak to key American values such as entrepreneurialism and philanthropy, volunteerism, community, and the invincible American spirit. And as Peter mentioned earlier as well, that one of the themes is really about inventing the future. And these are the individuals that really are, as youth ambassadors, inventing the future and creating the country and the world that they want to see. So active recruitment efforts begin this fall, and we hope that you'll stay in touch with us if you know anyone that you think fits this profile for a youth ambassador or a cultural performer. We're eager to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. There you can see on this last slide our contact details, social media hashtags for how to get in touch with the U.S. team. We have 10 or so minutes left, 11 minutes. I have a couple questions I'd like to throw at the illustrious group. Matthew, I'm going to let you sort of point the question in the right direction after I express it, please. The first one is, will the U.S. Pavilion have any exhibition space available for American nonprofit organizations active in higher education, specifically research and human capital development, especially those institutions that aim to have a physical presence in the UAE? And I'm going to add to that a question that came in while we were online here, also for the states. Will there be the same opportunity for different state organizations, economic and business development organizations, to come have a facility space and to connect, most importantly, with others from around the world who are visiting Expo? Over to you, Matthew.
So I think I'll actually maybe take that question here myself. And one thing that I want to highlight is that for this company or for others that might be interested in doing something in our pavilion, that's what one of the great features of that VIP multi-purpose space is. And so whether it's to hold a one-off seminar, whether it's to bring together maybe your stakeholders for an event, perhaps it's something to look at some type of virtual programming or actually a speaking engagement. I think this is where a tie-in to the programming team or a tie-in for one of our events would make the most sense for your firm. And as I mentioned before, there are going to be different weeks that the Expo is organizing where they're going to be focusing on certain sectors. But then the U.S. Commercial Service, as Shaker mentioned, is also planning to do kind of maybe industry-specific business development activities. So I encourage you to stay tuned, and we can tell you a little bit more about those weeks as they develop. On the specific question regarding states, and I'm so glad you asked, because this is something that we're very excited about, and I know that Jim Core back in DC in the Expo unit is very excited about. He actually spoke to the Governors Association as well as the State Economic Development Organization conference about the concept of state days. And this is where, again, it may be that we have a trade delegation and a cultural delegation. Maybe it's teamed up with the local chapter of Global Ties and some of their youth ambassadors, but we're bringing over folks as a group. And I know the Ambassador Ricolta is very keen on ensuring that we do have some good state participation. In the past, states have served as sponsors, and we can talk to you a little bit more about sponsorship opportunities if you want. They've talked also about supporting and as in value in kind. So there are ways for states to get engaged directly with the U.S. Pavilion. Danny.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm very glad to hear that Shocker and the U.S. commercial team are going to be focused on engagement with individual companies as well in that regard. In that vein, we've had 2 or 3 questions that sort of come around the theme of will there be an exhibit on personal air transportation displaying potential futuristic air transport vehicles? And will there be virtual simulation of the pilot experience of that? And what ways can companies that are in the aviation and aerospace sectors in particular find a way to connect here? I think there's a lot of interest in that, especially with some of the pictures that you had up on your various briefing slides. Peter, Simon, do you guys want to comment on that? Matthew, what do you think?
Sure. I think maybe Pete, talk a little bit more about maybe some of the story selection of some of the industries that we're trying to highlight in 3 and 4. And then we can add maybe an aspect to this of how we're trying to look at the new dates and how it coincides with the Dubai Air Show in November.
Absolutely. Yep, thank you very much. There is tremendous opportunity. We certainly have carved out a whole section of the show in Exhibit 4 to autonomous air transport as part of Autonomous Future. And certainly in Exhibit 3 as well, there's a couple of moments there, that a couple of moments being anywhere up to 2 to 4 minutes. Pavilions, we're always constrained for time, and particularly with a country like America, there's so much story to tell, particularly in that sector, that we have to sort of choose, what's the most compelling and engaging way to be able to get our audience well and truly, excited about what we're doing. But yeah, there's absolutely opportunities. And in fact, we're already reaching out to companies, in terms of being content partners in Exhibit 2 and Exhibit 3 at the same time in Exhibit 4. So yes, there absolutely is. And I think, as Matthew mentioned before too, particularly in the VIP areas, function spaces upstairs, there are also other opportunities as well that are completely, programmable, which give us a lot more flexibility in the pavilion.
Thank you. Does anyone want to add to that, particularly in the aviation and future sectors?
Yes, Danny, if I could say a couple of words. You may have noticed from my presentation that we will be focusing on transportation and aviation for our Discover America program. In particular, in the fall, we will be doing a webinar discussing specifically the aerospace and space sector. So I think it'd be very interesting for you to engage on that if you would like to reach out to us. And in addition, our in-person Discover America program the following fall will have room for American companies, and we can work with you as a partner to promote you at a customized event. So please contact us for more information if you'd like.
Thank you. Matthew, do you want to comment on the Dubai Air Show in any way? You mentioned that in your remarks.
Yeah, so 2 events that are kind of, we're fortunate now to have during the 6-month Expo window is, one is the International Astronomical Congress, again, the leading space congress that's going to take place in October. And given our focus on space and space exploration, we want to try to see what type of industry tie-in we can do for the 7,000 to 8,000 people that are going to be at this congress. That's the first time ever hosted in the Middle East. The second one is obviously the Dubai Air Show in November. That's going to take place during this 6 months activity as well. And so I think, working with FCS, we're going to try to see how we can have maybe a U.S. sector specific activity there at the pavilion during this time. But we're still looking also at when we want to have, our big, presidential delegations, congressional delegations come through, working with the chambers. So we just want to throw those 2 events out there that they're now taking place during the Expo, and we're going to try to program around some of that.
Thank you very much. That's very, very important to hear and to understand. As we all know, the air show, the Dubai Air Show, is one of the big events every 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we're down to a minute or two left before I want to ask our two ambassadors if they want to wrap up for 30 seconds or so. Are there any other remaining points, Matthew, that you want to use this time to get across? I'm looking through the Q&A here. I've had a number of questions about COVID-19 and social distancing come up. I think it's fair to say that with 15 months to go and 100 vaccines under development, we sort of have to watch and wait for a few more months to see where we might be. Is that a fair statement? Do you want to characterize how you and the Expo team are preparing for 15 months from now, given the backdrop of COVID-19?
Well, first and foremost, we're fortunate that the U.S. site has been able to continue construction without any incidents, and their team is safe and sound. And I can't underscore that enough, and I hope everyone else is safe and sound around the world. On the visitor numbers and the visitor journey and the experience, it is still too soon. That's kind of the message that Expo 2020 has told us. That's the message that the BIE, the Bureau of International Expositions, has also told us, that we need to, continue to plan, and that's what we're doing. We have our exhibition all in place. And if in October 2020 things are a different place and we have to look at visitor numbers then and visitor experience and the number of people that can get on our Travelator, then we'll do that. But that's not something that we're planning for now. We continue to kind of work with our original assumptions because, again, with about 16 months to go, I think we're going to make some progress on a vaccine and being in a better place. I'll just leave you with one thought. A lot of questions about how do I get information? What if I'm a Farsi speaker and I want to apply as a youth ambassador? www.usapavilion.org. Again, that has links to all of our partners. And so if you want to go to supply and give Simon something, you can contact him there. If you want to go to Global Ties and apply as a youth ambassador or a cultural performer, you can contact Katherine Brown and her team there. So usapavilion.org, best place to get all that information across to us. And just thank everyone for joining us today and allowing the creative team and the cultural team to share some of their story and excitement, because it's what they're doing day in and day out, and what makes all of us get up in the morning.
Thank you, Matthew. I think Ambassador Holliday and Ambassador Ricolta have logged off, but I really appreciate the partnership with Meridian, the partnership with you and your team. We look forward to doing a quarterly update on this, as I said earlier, perhaps in September or October, and hopefully we'll have even more details then to share of where you stand next. So thank you very much to everyone for joining today, and be safe and healthy wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much. Take care.